Hey everyone, it's Chris Kelly again, and thank you for joining my podcast today, or I should say, listening in on all things education and learning. And my guest today is Jeff Abramowitz, who works as the CEO for an organization called Petey Greene. They do a lot of work with the prison population and helping them get reacclimated into society through education and helping them in the work, helping them land that first job, and being able to prevent reincarnation, I can't say the word reincarceration. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Chris.
So to get started, can you give me a little bit of background of what you're doing at Petey Greene?
Yeah, so I am the CEO of the Petey Greene program, which was founded 15 years ago at Princeton University by the class of 1958. And they, a few men, women here at Princeton were enamored by a gentleman by the name of Petey Greene, who was a disc jockey in Washington, D.C., who had done some time in the prison system and came home and became really popular. He was kind of the Howard Stern of his day. And their idea or their concept was really pretty simple. It was to educate people, men and women that are justice impacted, people behind the walls of our prisons and jails, and doing it through one-on-one tutoring. So the Petey Greene program has grown over the years and evolved. And now our model is really simple. We work with college students. We train them to become tutors, as well as other volunteers. And then we bring them inside prisons and jails with us. And we work with people coming home on the outside to help people get smarter, period. And getting smart to me in education is being able to know math and reading and writing and getting your high school diploma, getting digital literacy skills, getting a bridge to college or going on and getting post-secondary education, getting a career credential. Anything that falls under that umbrella of getting somebody smarter is where we center. And it's all about our students and helping them prepare for their next chapter, which is when they leave the prisons and jails and hopefully become successful.
Very interesting. So from everything I understand, the education that you're doing really focuses when they are behind the walls of the prison. So like they're justice impacted, but you're working with the population actually when they're in the prison, and you're having college students go in and work with them to help develop these skills.
Yeah, for sure. I think that when you talk about our criminal legal system, that the idea or concept of reentry actually begins the first day you go into a prison or jail. And it's that first contact with our justice system where people begin to realize that they need to do more or learn more in order to avoid some of the things that got them into trouble to begin with. And that really happens inside where, oftentimes that there's not a lot of programming, and it's a time where you can hyper focus on things like learning your times tables or fractions or things that you need to know to be a good carpenter or a plumber, or being able to read better, or taking that first college class that you may have wanted to always take. So our belief is that a lot of times men and women in the world, not just in the carceral setting, but in the world, have a challenge saying 3 words, and that's I don't know. And when you can break that down to somebody that's one-on-one, it's a lot easier to say to one person, I don't know my math, I don't know addition very well, or I don't know multiplication or my division table or fractions very well, or I don't know how to read very well. Or it's easier to break that down so that you can target somebody to help them reach that milestone for them in their life. And that happens inside our prisons and jails, and it happens when people come home. They need that direct support. And we, as an agency at the Petey Greene program, we try to give it to them.
I mean, so it sounds as though like a big part of what you're trying to do is to get them to say that they don't have these skills. I mean, so like, when we look at society today, there's a big stigma around not being able to read or having low reading skills. Not as much in math, but in reading or in writing, there's definitely that stigma. So you're trying to help, not only in providing that education, but getting them to say, this is something that I need to work on if I'm going to be a productive, member of society once I leave these prison walls.
I think that's true. I think it's even simpler than that. Our goal is to get them to see in themselves what we see in them, and
Yep.
the talent and the skill and the things that they can do. And there's a great line that says, confidence breeds competence. And if we can get people confident in what they're doing, then they're going to be more competent at it. And that's really what it's all about, is giving people the ability to see in themselves that they can do it. And, they're smart and they have talent, and they just have to figure out for themselves how they're going to get there.
I agree. I mean, as someone who's been new to the adult education space, confidence plays a big role. Someone, who has, dropped out of high school, their confidence in education is lacking in many cases, and anything that you can do to help with those celebrations and those small wins, you build upon those, and that eventually gets to the point where they have those skills that they can then be successful in the workplace and have that career mobility that they ultimately want to have in their lives.
Yeah, and so you hit on a point which I want to make sure that I get to, which is the reality that when we talk about people that are incarcerated and formerly incarcerated coming home, we often talk about having them go back to get a job when they come home. And I want to stop. I want to change the narrative. And the change in the narrative is, I don't want to talk about jobs anymore. I don't think that helping somebody find a job when they come home is a good thing. I think what we need to be focused on is helping people find a career. So getting them find that pathway to a career. And if the job that you're assigning them to has the next step, a step after that leads to the career, that's great. But putting somebody just in a job that they don't want to do or don't love to do, they're not going to stick around. They're not going to stay. They're not going to do it. So let's focus on getting people sensitized to, what is the career that I want? What's really going to make me happy, that I get out of bed every day and I'm excited about what that day is going to lead for me.
Absolutely. I mean, so like a lot of the work that I've been doing right now has been focused on employee retention and reducing employee turnover. And if you place someone into a job, and using specifically the word job, I mean, that's like a set of tasks that you do, but there's no upside to that. And if you, change the narrative in terms of, we're going to start you in this position, and this is going to be, the ground level to getting that career and being able to have that career mobility, that's going to excite people more. And it's a win-win for everybody involved. It's a win for the person, and that they have that career that they're excited about and they have that upward mobility. But it's also a win for the employer, and that they have, someone who's going to be loyal to their company, and it helps reduce turnover and costs and all of those things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We always say it's not about getting the job, it's keeping at the job, retaining it. And that's what it's all about.
So the question I have is, working with people who are incarcerated, are there any special challenges or things that people that are in my position need to think about in terms of building curriculum, things of that nature to work with this audience?
Absolutely. There are many. And if you think about it, there are the challenges that people face inside the walls are really different. First of all, we don't have internet access in most of our prisons and jails. We're working off of tablets. Sometimes we're working off of really antiquated systems and books. Sometimes they're GED testing books that are way outdated, or resources that are way outdated. Sometimes finding a pencil or a pen or paper to write on is a challenge. Sometimes, remember in the classroom setting, when you're in 5th grade, all of your students around you are around the same space. They're all around the same level. In prison, you could have somebody at a 2nd grade level, a 5th grade level, an 8th grade level, and they're all in the same classroom. because
Yep.
that's where the class is offered. So there are a lot of really basic challenges that happen inside of our prisons and jails that we should really be calling out and recognizing that learning often is really difficult. And that's why tutoring is so important. And so proud of the work we do at the Petey Greene program, because that one-on-one support we do for so many people actually levels the playing field a little bit. It allows those people at a higher level to continue learning, and those people that are a little bit slower, a little bit behind, get the attention they need to catch up. So it makes a lot of good sense for the programs that we're in. And that's really just the beginning of it. There's often not a lot offered inside our prisons and jails. There generally is a GED class or high school equivalency class, but there's not often a ton of offerings to support people through their educational journey.
Right. No, I mean, I see this as an investment. I mean, if you look at it as a cost, or something that you have to do because people are in prison, you're looking at this at the wrong way. Like, we need to be investing in these people to prevent people from going back to prison and being able to have, a productive career, once they leave those walls.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Like, the return on investment on this is amazing. And we don't think of it that way, but for every dollar spent inside our prisons and jails, it probably is way over $10 or $15 that we're going to get back. When you talk about the scope of it, we are the most incarcerated country in the world with 1.2 million people incarcerated. We should be thinking about investing more money in helping people get smarter inside and giving them skills training inside and helping them when they come home to navigate that part. Because if you think about the cost on the outside, if we do nothing and they just continue going through the cycle, we're incarcerating people. It costs money. And how about their families?
Yep.
And all the welfare rolls that they're eating up and things like that we really should be mindful of. We're working on a proposal now that's a return on investment study for adult education in our prisons and jails to really drill down on what does that number look like? And I think people are going to be really surprised at how much it costs to incarcerate somebody in this country and how much we lose in gross national product just from them not being out and being fully employed and putting money into our country.
Absolutely. So go back to your point earlier about, the drastic difference in where people are in their education journey. So one of the things that I've seen, since I've been working in this space is, as you said, it's a broad spectrum. Like, when you look at people getting a GED, you have some people who dropped out senior year and they just need a little bit of a push. And then you have other people that are reading at second grade reading level. So when you look at, Petey Greene, and you work with the tutoring and you work with the tutors, how do you prepare those tutors for the wide range of individuals they will be working with?
Yeah, so we have it's probably the thing I'm most proud of is we have a wide range of tutoring training programs, but our tutor training program that we go through is pretty intensive. And all of our volunteers must go through it, but they're really taught how to meet people where they are is essentially is our model is wherever that student is, we work with them. And we do try to pair our tutors up with their students that are appropriate. But the truth is that every student is a little bit different. They're all at different levels, and being nimble and trying to understand. And then the other thing is never make assumptions. When we have our tutors work with students, we don't assume that they know their multiplication table or that they can read very well or they can write a paragraph or that they know their digital literacy skills. We assume nothing. And then as we meet them where they are, we figure out where their strengths are and where they really need help. And that's where we hone in on.
So it sounds as though that they're both doing kind of, I don't want to say the diagnosis, because that sounds like there's something wrong with you, but they're doing an evaluation of where they are and then trying to meet them. But in terms of, one of the things I've seen in workforce education, particularly when it comes to GED, is that you often have to make references to things they're familiar with in life. So if they're working in the restaurant business, making associations to the restaurant business or hospitality? How much do you try to bring in those associations to things that they may know already?
Yeah, everywhere we can. Contextualized learning is a wonderful thing. I've been working with U.S. Department of Education the past few years on a project called an IET, an integrated education training, which is where simply a math teacher teaches fractions in the same classroom as a carpentry teacher. And it's this contextualized learning with some career preparedness on top of it. And those are the kind of models where adult learners really learn well and thrive, because you got it, because they're really contextualizing what they're learning and it makes sense to them. If you can imagine learning fractions with a piece of pizza or a pizza pie in front of you, that makes a lot more sense than just thinking about a third. What does that look like? Like, if you visualize it and you can see it, then adult learners learn a lot better that way. I know I learn a lot better that way as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. In my previous life, I actually worked with companies to help them build their education products. And there was a company that I worked with, and they were focused on people who have low literacy. And the challenge was because they were working with a lot of people who were high school age. When you looked at books that were focused at the second grade reading level, they focused on things that would be considered babyish to that audience. And they really went out of their way to create materials that would resonate with a high school student, knowing that they had, these deficiencies in reading, to try to make it more relevant and to engage them in a way that they typically weren't engaged before.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And I think that it's you use every trick you can find working with adult learners, and the key is to do whatever works and connects with them, and that's what we try to do.
Interesting. So when someone is about to leave the prison walls, how does Petey Greene try to help make that transition to, make that transition back into society?
Yeah, so simply it's really about connecting them to resources on the outside and letting them know that just because you're coming home doesn't mean your educational journey needs to stop. There are places and people outside that can help you, and giving them the guidance of where to go to talk to them. And we work with a lot of programs on the outside that are reentry programs that will embed tutors in their reentry programs, so that when they come in, they're learning about digital literacy and how to use a computer and the internet and getting a Gmail account and doing all those things, as well as learning math and reading. And they might be really close to getting a high school diploma and just need a place to go so they can get some support and continue it. And we're there when that happens.
Right. So it's not that the journey doesn't end when they leave the prison walls. Like, they've started their journey towards getting, a GED or a college degree or any of those things. It's getting them to continue on that journey to help them to land that career and be able to have a successful life.
For sure. And more than that, it's about getting everyone to understand that adult learners that come home from prisons and jails, they don't stop programming or not continue on because they can't do it. They stop going because of life. Like, they need to find a home, and they need to connect with their families again. They need to get diapers for their kids and get a career, and all these other things come into play. So it's important for people to understand that there are a lot of barriers for adult learners coming home from our prisons and jails, and we need to meet them where they are. And sometimes that means having a night class or providing them with some resources that will help them get on a computer when they can, or access the internet. All these different things that get in the way, and they require a little bit more attention than a regular adult learner who may be out because they're also being monitored, and they're often have a parole officer that has some requirements for them. So just understanding the whole dynamic of it all is super important, as we remember that learning should be a constant thing, and it should never stop. Just because you leave a prison or jail, you shouldn't think that, okay, I don't have to go to class anymore, I'm good. you should be continuing to strive for those goals that will find you that career path and reach the academic goals you've been striving for.
So it's a path that's a continuation. And I think it's true for all of us, whether or not we have been, in prison or not. Like, we need to be continuing our education and refining our skills and all of that, because they're changing all the time. But to an earlier point that you bring up, like, if you don't have the basic reading and writing skills and the math skills, there's very little that you can do to get those additional skills, whether it be through education or in the workplace.
For sure. And not only that, it's learning should never stop for anybody. And we should always be looking to do more, to learn more, and to better ourselves. And I don't think it's for people that are just justice impacted. I think that everyone has something every day that they should try to learn from and, to better themselves. It's something I live by.
Right. Absolutely. It's something we should all live by. So when you work with let me step back here. When you are working with, the people who are leaving from prison, how do you work with the employers to try to help bridge that gap, if at all, it's part of what Petey Greene does?
So it doesn't. Petey Greene does not really hone in on education, on workforce development per se. It's work that I do personally. And as I go around, speak around the country, I'm talking to employers all the time, and I'm trying to get them to understand some of the challenges people face when they come home, and getting them to not make those assumptions when they hire somebody, and to hire somebody based on their skill set and not based on their background or what's in their past. Things like understanding people that come home may not have transportation to get to work the first week. Yep. They may not have clothing, or they may not have the right clothing for a job or work boots. They may not have a cell phone when they come home. Like, there's all these different things that pose challenges that if employers were aware of, it'd probably be a lot easier for them to help the person navigate. And so it's a lot of education for employers. And what we're finding is employers are engaging, and they are finding a wealth of talent that's out there that is doing tremendous good for their companies.
So it's interesting, because I attended a conference at Talent Forward, Talent Connect. I'm blanking on the exact name.
Talent Forward.
Talent Forward. Thank you, Jeff. I know we were both at the event and we didn't connect there. But there was a number of speakers who talked about the need to provide supporting benefits to employees, not only to help them in terms of recruitment and retention, but to make work possible. Things like transportation, same-day pay, a cell phone. Like, if people don't have those things, they're just not going to be able to participate in the workforce. And, by providing those things, there's a tremendous return on investment for the employer in terms of, like, being able to retain those people, but also, it's making work possible in these cases. Yeah.
So for sure, it's education. And I like to say it starts from the top and works its way down. But the truth is that, we were at Talent Forward. There's a lot of CEOs in the room and leaders of companies. But the truth is, it really has to go and filter all the way down to the HR, the human resource department, that's looking at all these candidates and saying, okay, what skill set do you bring to the table for us? How can we take advantage of it? Because it's often a filter for a lot of companies. Criminal background checks are one of the biggest barriers to people coming home. And it's a very easy way for an employer to say, we're not going to give you a shot, just by the fact that they may have something in their background. And I think that narrative's got to go away. And what we should be thinking about is, what do you bring to the table? How can you help our company? And then look at the other challenges they may have had, and is it a good fit for your company? I often think of a great rule might be a 3-week trial period for everyone that's employed. No questions asked. If you don't like it in 3 weeks, you walk away. And if we don't like you in 3 ways, we're going to part ways without no harm, no foul kind of thing. And I love that, because it gives the employer a chance to test drive the car, and the employee to do the same thing, to see if it's a good fit both ways. I think we'd be a lot better as a society if instead of just jumping into a job that you don't really like, you give somebody an opportunity to see what it's all about, let them try it, and you try them and see if they're a good fit. And then if not, then you part ways and you move on, hopefully to something better.
I agree. I mean, like when you take a job, you're going in full time. Like that's like the way the job works. There's no trial period at most organizations. Like you come in, you start as a full-time employee. I mean, yes, a lot of companies have probationary periods, and they're trying to figure out like whether or not you're going to work or not work, and they want to be able to invest in that person like once they know that this person's going to be a good fit for for this particular organization.
Yep, for sure.
Great. So two other questions I have, Jeff. So when you look at the success stories of the people who have worked in the Petey Greene program, is there one or two stories that really stand out to you as being like, these are the people that really show the success of what our program can deliver?
Yeah, there's hundreds of them. I mean, we've been doing this for 15 years. We've worked with thousands of people. I guess one that recently comes to mind is a woman out in Pittsburgh who was named Student of the Year in Pennsylvania. And she was recognized for not only getting her high school diploma, but going on and beginning her college degree and moving forward. She was a Petey Greene student, but I was impressed because I was at the banquet where she was given her award last year, and she got up to accept her award, and right next to her was her 6-year-old granddaughter. And her granddaughter was so proud of her grandma, who just got this award as Student of the Year for making a great accomplishment of getting her high school diploma and getting into college. And I think one of the things we need to be aware of in our country is that the greatest determinant of a child's education in their lifetime is the education of their parents, and in particular their mom. And we need to focus on and recognize that the smarter we can get our parents, our moms and dads in this country, and our adult learners, the greater generational impact this is going to have down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so it's interesting because, my father comes from a family of 9, and I probably shouldn't be saying this out loud, but I will anyways. He is the only one in his family who went to college. Me and my brother, we went to college, but when you look at some of my cousins, that was not necessarily the case. I mean, there's definitely, a connection there between like the education of the parents that you have and like the amount of reinforcement. Like I was brought up in a household like where I was told from the time I was first grade, you're going to college. It was drilled into my head that you're going to do that. Now it's a whole other debate, whether or not like skills based or any of this other stuff is going to work, but I mean it was really enforced from day one in my family that you're going to education is important.
Yeah, for sure.
So in terms of the programs that you're operating, obviously it's a nonprofit. How can people contribute to Petey Greene in terms of either donations or other things that they can give to help these programs?
Yeah, there's so many things you can do. The easiest thing to do is go onto our website, which is www.peteygreen.org. And Petey Greene is spelled PeteyGreene. So there's an E at the end of green.org. And if you go onto our website, you're going to find there's a lot of neat things on there. But one of the ways is you can volunteer. Certainly, there's easy to make a donation. We always appreciate that. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. And the other is maybe to get involved in our Justice Education series, where you can hop on and learn more about topics that are justice related in education. We are always having these Justice Education series. They are totally free. You might want to think about becoming a board member or becoming on the advisory board. And we welcome any interest that people have, or even volunteering with us inside our prisons and jails or on the outside. So all those things are fair game. And just reach out, hit us up with an email, and I'll get back to you, or my staff will get back to you, and we'll talk through what a good lane for you might be.
Question before we end is, how much of a role does your organization play in advocating for these services at the government level, both the state and federal level?
We do a lot. I mean, part of our work and part of our mission is speaking up for those people that are incarcerated and that are formerly incarcerated, and letting the government know how important education is for people that are justice impacted, and that, you know, education can hold a key to reducing our problem of mass incarceration in our country. So it is a large part of the work that we do. We're not advocacy driven or advocacy hyper focused, but it's important for us, and we make sure that legislators and other people that are in the community, as well as our government leaders, know that we can really make an impact, and it's been proven. So bring it on. Let's make change happen, and let's get people smarter so they can figure out what's next for them.
Great. Well, Jeff, thank you very much for being on my podcast today. So for those of you who want to learn more about Petey Greene, I have a link here on LinkedIn, so you can, you know, look at Jeff's profile. You can also look at the profile for Petey Greene. The website, as Jeff said, is www.peteygreen, P-E-T-E-Y, Greene, Greene.org. Feel free to look at the site if there's any questions or any way that you think you could be helpful to the organization. That would be phenomenal. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.